As always, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name's Joe Ferla. I've been here at Enable for 7 years. I've held most of our customer-facing positions, everything from channel sales to sales engineer to partner success management, where I helped create the team, to now head nerd. I am the head nerd for operational efficiency, as well as Insight, Mac, Analytics, Cloud Commander, just a variety of tools here in the Enable family. More importantly, however, should you have any questions or concerns that you'd like to send my way, you will see my email as well as my LinkedIn. And then, of course, you can find me on Reddit as Head Nerd Joe. So if you have any follow-up to this particular presentation or any items that need to be taken a look at, please feel free to shoot them my way. All right, you'll have to accept my apologies for these next two slides. For some reason, GoToWebinar is not the biggest fan of them. But that being said, they do house some useful information. You got the Head Nerd blog here. If you haven't subscribed, I highly recommend doing so. Scan the QR code. The blogs are quite nice. You'll get items like me and Jason Murphy coming through with operational efficiency. You'll see Lewis Pope and his security blogs or his traditional Patch Tuesday monthly release. Just a good amount of items in here that are quite useful and quite nice. So we're going to be divided into two sections today. We're going to start off with what is operational efficiency, why do we care about it, and how does it apply to us? And then we're going to look at individual sections of our service delivery, defining them, and looking at the opportunities that we have for operational efficiency in those individual sections. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back for measuring service delivery. What are we going to be looking at applying metrics to? How are we going to use those metrics? What are some basics to at least begin with, if not improve our reporting? And then we'll look at steps we can take and where we can look at improving service delivery with some benchmarks and some items that we see from our polling of our partners and then MSPs within the space. So we start off nice and simple with, a very succinct definition of what is operational efficiency. Quite nicely, it is defined as the ratio of input to output of a business process. Inputs are going to be things like money, people, time, effort, inventory, resources used to complete that business process. Outputs are going to be measured in things like billable hours, tickets closed, time saved. But for today's purposes, at least at the beginning of this conversation, we're going to focus on the outputs being revenue. Okay. One, because that's the easiest way, or one of the easiest ways to see effects on our business for the actions that we're taking. But it's also kind of what I like to drive home inside this operational efficiency talk, since as we go through it, we're going to routinely see that one of the goals of this is not just to increase our revenue, but provide us with resources to reinvest back into our company, provide us with the ability to grow our wallet share rather than market share, and look at increasing our capacity ahead of our volume increases. So every one of those items coming back to revenue, the additional or the add of additional revenue, and what can we look at doing inside our organization with that, right? Operational efficiency is very, very nice to have, but if we don't see the fruits of our labor or the results of the never ending process that we're undertaking, and some nice examples of it, we would never jump down this rabbit hole. Because let's be honest, operational efficiency is not a one and done type project item. It is a cultural shift, it is an organizational ethos shift. It is something that needs to be embedded in your organization from top to bottom, and getting these nice, measurable, but nice results, and what we can do as a result of our efficiency efforts, always quite nice to see. As always, again, a hyper simple definition here for what could be one of the most nebulous topics in the business space, give or take a few, um, but at least a good succinct one to kind of give you the idea of where we're going to be operating today. So we're going to talk about some numbers. Okay, first things first, this is a little bit older of a poll. I am aware of that, but the numbers have maintained. Okay. We have seen a little bit of growth in profit on the median and best in class sides here, but not by much. The general gaps in between our quartiles that we're going to be looking at tend to be the same. So, first things first, operational efficiency. How or why does it apply to IT service providers or MSPs or internal IT departments or whomever we're going to be working with? Well, quite simply, it affects our EBITDA, right? EBITDA being earnings before income, taxes, depreciation, and appreciation. As MSPs, more often than not, we won't see an EBITDA number, primarily because, well, we don't have much depreciation and we don't have much appreciation. EBIT, earning before income and taxes, tends to be what we're measuring ourselves against. Another way to think of this would be our um, net profit or revenue. But again, we'll get to that in a moment. So, what do we see across our four quartiles, right? We see the bottom quartiles in the operational efficiency hierarchy. So, almost no operational efficiency, or everything's done by the seat of their by the seat of their pants. They're kind of flying a little bit wild, if you will. We're going to see just not quite breaking even, about a negative 0.7% profit, if I believe my numbers are correct. Okay, the median two quartiles on average, we're going to see in that kind of mid range of operational maturity, 8.7% profit. Inside best in class, we're going to be looking at a large jump up to 18.4% profit on average. That can go up a little bit. Don't think that your cap is that 18.5%, right? You'll continue to see the benefits of efficiency and that kind of deal as you continue to go through the motion. Um, I'm sure there's a cap somewhere, but every time I try and come up with one, I talk to an MSP who I have to call out and go, there's no possible way. They go and show me revenue for the past year and profit for the past year. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll put my foot in my mouth. So 18.4 as that average. And these numbers are quite nice to see, but when we're talking about how operational efficiency is going to apply to service providers in a monetary fashion, a much better or easy to understand way to look at this is, let's compare it to an MSP. And we're going to use a nice little fictitious MSP here. And we're going to use a 2 million revenue MSP as an example. Okay, what we're going to look at is our bottom quartile with a $2 million revenue is seeing a $6,000 year-over-year loss. Again, little to no operational efficiency inside their org, or little to no push for efficiency inside their org. Right? We jump to our median quartile, just shy of 175K net profit. Okay, and then we see our best in class just shy of 370K net profit. And this becomes quite real for us, not only because as we move up in our maturity, we start to see bigger and bigger gains here, but more so because MSPs are in what I kind of like to term startup mode. I tend to separate businesses very broadly into two types. There are the startup mode businesses and there are the enterprise mode businesses, kind of judging not only age, but stability, operational efficiency, blah, blah. Okay. And what I mean by startup mode is that the vast majority of your net profits are going to get put back into your business. Enterprise mode, those net profits are going to do something else. Okay. They're going to go to investitures. They're, going to go as additional salary or pay or something along those lines, bonuses, that kind of deal, right? What we're looking at is 90% of the MSPs I talk to, net profit goes back into the organization. So when we look at our median quartile at 175K, dude, this is phenomenal. That's a L3 technician and a salesperson, maybe a marketing campaign. But when we see the jump up to our best in class for operational efficiency, 370K net profit, that is a salesperson, a marketing campaign, a tier 3 tech, a tier 1 tech, a new engineer, right? This is just a mass of money that we can put back into our business and put back into our organization to either foster or continue growth as we need, be it market share or wallet share. We can look at expanding our capacity. We can look at expanding out our services. There's just a number of items that we can do with this money. It also gives us a great start to overcoming hurdles in the MSP space. One we'll take a look at in just a second being the hurdle from break, fix, and a la carte services to proactive and fully managed. Another being getting yourself prepped and ready for the 5 million hurdle. Every MSP I've talked to that's over $5 million has said that mark was the hardest mark they had to get over in their life cycle. It doesn't matter if they're 6 million or if they're 600 million. Every MSP says that 5 million mark is just a hurdle to cross, right? And they all come back with, I wish I had known what I was going to fight when I was fighting. Okay, to leave that conversation for another day, but a very quick summary, it was organizational structure, operational efficiency, hiring for capacity ahead of volume, and maintaining a consistent new sales acquisition stream while maintaining or gaining wallet share. And 270K or 370K goes a long way to attacking a lot of those issues. So we look at that money and we look at it being quite valuable for us. So we come over this why do we care item, and we look at the increase in revenue. We look at what efficiencies bringing us, right? Reducing costs, increasing capacity, right? Which in turn increases profit, increases revenue. We talked about profit fueling our growth for marketing or hiring to increase capacity ahead of volume, right? But a couple things we didn't talk about in those slides are arguably two of the most important things when it comes to MSPs. And that's going to be client retention and business valuation. So on the client retention side of the deal, the more efficient you are, the more you can standardize. The more you standardize, the more you can look at providing consistent and expected and predictable customer service. With that standardization and predictability, you can also onboard technicians quicker. Your technicians have a better expectation of the day-to-day work they're going to be doing. They're able to get through their work quicker. We've come in and reduced redundant and repetitive tasks and the like. So we're increasing customer satisfaction through world-class customer service. We're also making our employees happier as we go through efficiency because we're taking stuff off their plate, and happier employees equal happier customers because customer service maintains that high level of expectation, especially the happier you can keep your employees. Happy employees, happy customers, right? And this goes at hitting customer churn. Now, customer churn, stability of employment, profit, okay? Also, lifetime value of that customer, showing that you can build that wallet share as you move up a maturity model by introducing new services, moving them up from, say, break, fix, or a la carte services to proactive or fully managed, all comes into our business valuation. So business valuation is going to come into play in two places for us. Well, three places, right? First up, do you want to sell? Well, business valuation is top of your mind, right? And the more operationally efficient you are, the better you retain your clientele, the better you retain your employees, the better your standard operating procedures are documented, the better your automation is. All of this comes into play with profit, of course, to raise your business valuation. Operationally mature, so that upper quartile of operational efficiency, MSPs, I have seen valued up to double-digit valuations. Okay, I've seen as high, though not quite recently, but as high as 13 times valuation, right? I've seen say the median or lower quartiles down to the one half, the one valuation. Okay, so operational efficiency, increasing that profit, increasing customer satisfaction, all of these items come heavily into play into business valuation. Now, business valuation isn't just for when we sell the company. Business valuation does also give us a couple other things to think about. First off, it allows us to benchmark ourselves against our peers in our market if the information is accessible. If the average business valuation in your market is a 3.5 times valuation and you're sitting at 5 to 7, you know you're doing very well, right? If it's 3.5 times and you're sitting at a 1, we need to step up our game. The other thing too with business valuation that I think I've found with MSPs boils down to the fact that regardless of why we got into the MSP space, every MSP that I've ever talked to has one of two goals in mind with their business. They're either going to sell it to someone or an organization that they trust and like so that they can retire sitting on a beach or a golf course or the mountains or wherever, or they're going to use it as a organization or a launching pad for a mentee or a family member or a child or something like that, where they've made this nice business, they're going to pass it on to keep it within their circle, if you will, and give the inheritor a nice little jumping off point to start getting their feet under them in the working environment and the entrepreneurial environment and the like, right? So what are those two goals? Business valuation is a great way of identifying how successful you are at one, building that platform, but two, how successful that platform is going to be in the future, right? Because let's be honest, the higher the business valuation, the harder it is to harm something. Because typically you've got well built out processes and procedures. But anywho, I digress. outside of all of this profit talk and all of this money talk, the other primary reason we are going to be focused on operational efficiency within the MSP space is this kind of maturity model, if you will, or the spectrum of IT service delivery maturity. And the reason we focus on this is the further up the operational efficiency maturity realm you go, or the further up those quartiles you go, the further up this chart we go. Okay. The bottom quartile of operational maturity can, by all means, offer fully managed services, but it's going to be a slog and it's going to be very difficult for them. Okay, to the point that more often than not, they're going to be bleeding a little bit harder than that $6,000 loss, right? So more operational maturity equals higher up this maturity kind of chart. Okay. And what we'll focus on here is no matter where we start, as we add maturity, we start getting closer and closer to kind of that perfect customer that we want as MSPs. We want a customer that treats us not like a checkbox for insurance, but as a consultant, a VCIO. They value our opinion. They value our expertise. They understand that the services we bring to the table are productivity tools, not just IT. IT is an intrinsic part of the businesses that we manage and the businesses that we serve inside our market. And we're there not just to be IT providers. We are there to make sure that their productivity and peace of mind is there. So moving up this model, we're entering into a smaller part of the market. There's also a smaller amount of MSPs who are truly highly operationally mature, right? But with that comes more profitability. And I'd much rather have a 100-person fully managed client than a 100-person break fix client. One, fully managed is going to make me a far shot more revenue. It'll be recurring, all those benefits. Okay. It also puts me in a position as I move up this model to start accepting only the clientele that I want, not the clientele that I have to accept. And what I mean by this is as we're in those lower operational maturity quartiles, at some point we just can't say no to business. We are getting hampered by our lack of operational efficiency, hitting our revenue, that if we're not taking everybody who's coming through the door, we're not growing or generating revenue at a pace to maintain open doors, right? So as we move up, as we see that revenue grow, as we see ourselves start to get to where we're truly grabbing wallet share rather than just market share, right? We start to see a lot of benefits to our organization. But that's not to say that each of these clientele is going to have a negative impact on our organization, right? Find me an MSP that's 100% fully managed. I actually think they very rarely exist. Find me an MSP that's had their doors open for a reasonable amount of time that's fully break fix. Again, I don't think they reasonably exist. We're always going to see a mix. So once we're in that high upper quartile of operational efficiency, if you're looking for a breakdown, you want to be about 80-20. 80% fully managed, 20% break fix clientele wise. Okay, we'll look a little bit more in that mix as we get further along in these slides. So break fix clients. Basic characteristics that tend to be a little bit of downside to these clients is that they are very inefficient, right? They're expecting on-site. They're expecting very little remote support. They tend to require a lot of manual labor. And when we're entering this space, the barrier for entry isn't that you need automation. It's just you need a phone, right? So We also look at them being highly disruptive, both to the customer and ourselves as the ITSP. We also look at a very unpredictable cash flow here, right? If I'm waiting for my end users to call, I'm going to have a hard time predicting where my revenue is going to be month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. But that's not to be said, or that's not to say that there aren't opportunities here, at least in the operational efficiency world. Okay? And as we go through this, what we'll see is even at this break fix level, the behaviors we're putting in place are designed to be building blocks as to which we are continually putting additional layers on or compounding on, right? So we first up have reactive automation, right? Break fix is a great time to start looking at how am I going to start creating a tool belt? How am I going to start putting arrows in a quiver for my technicians to be able to automate the reactive work? I get we're not doing proactive or self-healing yet, but I need to start automating things like I can't print. I need to start automating things like I need to reset my password and start looking at this, which also lends us into we need a remote support tool. At the break fix level, if we're going to gain revenue and efficiency, the easiest thing to knock out is on-site work. On-site work is always very expensive for you as the MSP. It just is. So the more remote support we can get, the better off we're going to be. This also allows us to start tackling efficiency within our ticketing tool. Now, I know the slide says PSA, but at this level, we're primarily within a ticketing system. We're not quite to the point where we need that full-blown CRM, inventory management, asset management, project management, um, true documentation management, password management, KB management, PSA, right? We're typically at the level where we need ticketing. Who did what work, when, where, how? And we can start to build efficiencies within that system into our organization, right? How are our tickets going to be getting to the right spot? How are we going to track time in our tickets? How are we going to be able to store and report on user and device history? Right. So 3 very good sections for us to be able to start building those efficiencies into our org and reap the benefits of them as we're moving up. So the next step up here from break fix is going to be a la carte. This is where we're offering on a small scale, okay, because we'll talk about co-managed in a second, things like only patch, only backup, only AV, only EDR, only web protection or DNS filter, right? So we're still reasonably inefficient. One, because we don't have the whole environment. Two, we don't get the whole picture. Three, these are also more than likely break fix clients still. They just have said, okay, we want to pay you $6 a device for the next year so that you can handle patching for me. Okay. Um, so these are clients that are picking and choosing. So still inefficient, still disruptive to day to day. We have some predictable cash flow now, but billable time is still the vast majority of our revenue. So here we see the ability to take these downsides and start turning them into opportunities. Again, we've got the 3 we saw previously: remote support, PSA or ticketing primarily being here, reactive automation. But what we're now going to see is the use of a remote monitoring and management tool for the remediation and deployment of our subscribed services. I'm not going to sell patch management without an RMM. I'm not going to sell EDR management without a deployment method. I don't want to say just have SentinelOne's deployment for remote work, right? I'd like to have an RMM where I can script it or it's integrated, that kind of deal. So we continue building on what we already have. We build it into the RMM if we can. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, remote support. We also start looking at optimizing some of our basics within our RMM tool for the services we're offering as a la carte. Then we move to proactive. Proactive is where we start to really turn the corner in operational efficiency. In that, here's where we're going to start to see less issues and much less disruption, because now we're being able or given the opportunity to take care of stuff before problem happens. Now, we are very endpoint focused in this, very little in the user world, very little in the total environment world, but we are very good at individual devices. So we're able to start gaining some major efficiency jumps, right? We're able to start seeing opportunities for operational efficiency far above and beyond what we would see in the break fix or a la carte, or better yet, which may not be far above and beyond, but which are able to be recognized because we're not spending, not wasted, but useless time automating proactive stuff or working on proactive stuff before we're getting paid for it, right? This is also where we see subscription revenue equal to or greater than our time billing. 50/50 is a good place to sit. We'd much rather see, as you move up into fully managed, going to that 80/20, 70/30, 60/40 range. Okay. And then what we're also going to see with this is the name of the game with proactive maintenance and our reactive automation and our security stances is that we're going to start reducing problems, and we're going to start to build into our end users' heads more of a, we are a revenue service, we are an efficiency service, we are a productivity tool. This is where we step away from selling tech and we start selling productivity and peace of mind. And in today's day and age, that productivity and peace of mind comes through the lens of cybersecurity. So the opportunities we see here mimic that. We're going to keep the same base that we had from a la carte. But what we're going to do now is we're going to switch typically from a ticketing tool to a PSA. We now need to look at asset tracking, warranty tracking, asset age tracking, OS tracking, inventory management. You may want CRM. But we're also going to need at least the basics of documentation and password management. We're going to need the additional CRM of automated billing or integration with a billing tool, right? We're going to start to see and need those items a little bit more. What we're also going to see inside the operational efficiency world is the need for automation to start replacing labor for routine or proactive maintenance. Because of the complexity of services offered here, I don't want a technician spending Friday going through and looking at every device's available disk space, and if it's below a certain threshold, running remediation on it. We need to start setting that up to happen. Once every 7 days, we empty the recycle bin, clean up all temp files, and delete every download older than 90 days. Right? We go in and make sure things like UAC are enabled, make sure BitLocker is enabled. And if it's not, start taking care of the problem before it rears its ugly head to the end users. So now automation starts to take on, it's not just a tool in our tool belt, it is a productivity tool for us as well. And we'll see on top of that, your RMM start to combine everything for this program structure, right? Where remote support, feature deployment, device management, and maintenance is now brought into a single pane of glass. Okay. Fully managed is going to be the perfect or the prime customer. This is where we can see another large jump in efficiency gains. They are going to be the most efficient or operationally efficient type client to have, right? They are going to be the least disruptive. They are going to have the most predictable cash flow, right? Once we're in this boat, the subscription revenue is going to far exceed the time billing. Not saying the project work or break fix and a la carte is going to go away, but we need to be in that 80-20 range more often than not. If you're really good, 90-10. And we're going to see things like our proactive maintenance and security stances not only start to reduce problems, but also start to lead us to our opportunities, which is going to be everything we've talked about already with the addition of automated remediation. In the proactive world, I'm still charging time and materials for tickets. I'm still charging uh, 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 for um, oh my goodness, block hour contracts and the like. Here, it's all you can eat. So the better your automation, entering self-healing, we're going to be looking at bettering and increasing our revenue. Above and beyond this, you're going to see co-managed. This is where we're looking at MSPs supporting small to medium enterprise-sized businesses with addendums to their already existing support. This could be patch, it could be security, it could be frontline management, it could be L1 support, it could be as a SOC, right? There's just a number of ways that we can look at providing co-managed services. But there's also a number of things that we're going to look at bringing in for efficiency here, right? Co-managed services are, for all intents and purposes, a la carte with fully managed efficiency behind them. So if I'm going to offer a 2,000 person organization patch, I'm going to automate as much as I can. I'm going to get my automated healing or remediation set in behind me to say automatically handled failed patches. I'm going to start doing, much more so that our clientele sees that best in class service delivery for those items. And fully managed is more and more becoming part of, or not fully managed, co-managed is becoming more and more part of the MSP space. COVID taught enterprise organizations at least one thing about our market, and that is that they are slow, they are plodding, and they are difficult to adapt and evolve. MSPs, on the other hand, we are quick, we are agile, we are easy to evolve. We are always making sure that we are market leading in our service offerings. That's why large enterprise businesses came to us to help them move remotely or move to remote work during COVID. I was in Australia the other week, about 2 weeks ago, and most of the attendees had co-managed folks that stayed with them through COVID. So quite nice to see, right? These large enterprise businesses able to start adopting our services. So we talk about the migration and movement up the maturity models, and we talk about, okay, so where are we going to look at bringing operational efficiency in? Okay, where are we going to be looking at putting these items into our org? So we look at this chart here. This should be very familiar for us, right? Our technicians are spending all their days on these 6 items. Now, the solving complex problems we're going to remove from this equation. We don't want to affect negative change here. We want positive change. But when we look at, and complex problems are going to be the items that aren't associated with tickets. These are the pro services. These are the ad hoc items. These are the big ticket 10, 15, 20, 50, $100,000 projects that we get brought in, right? The rest of these 5 items, these are the things that we want to affect, right? We want to shrink their share of this pie chart. And this is where operational efficiency comes in, right? I don't like the fact that my techs are going to silo information into their own heads or onto their own devices, right? I need to focus on sharing. I don't want my techs dealing with excess administration time. I don't want them dealing with timekeeping and documentation slowdowns or inefficiencies. I don't want proactive maintenance tasks being manually handled, right? I don't want repetitive and redundant tasks being manually handled for that matter, right? So we want inside this pie chart to right clicked there, should have left clicked, remove complex problems. This should grow. I want to handle more 10, 15, 20, 50, $100,000 tickets or projects, excuse me. But I want to shrink the rest of this pie chart. So we're going to be given 4 levers that we can pull. Structure staff, leverage automation, eliminate wasted time, and reduce avoidable issues. Okay. And what we should see from this here is that in the owner's role, while we can pull these levers, we need to be working on our business, not in our business. Your job isn't to create the automation, it's to determine where that automation path should go. Your job isn't necessarily to determine what time we're wasting, or I guess I should say, implement the fixes to reduce wasted time. That's your service delivery management, right? You're there to say, okay, I see we're putting this much wasted time into research. We need to figure out a better documentation system. How can we look at doing this? I like this KB. I like it set up. How can we take this and run with it in our organization, right? You are steering the ship. Others inside your organization are pulling the oars or making sure your sales are properly up or down or whatever you want to think of this, right? The other thing we should take from this is, if we haven't stressed this enough, the more efficient you are, the higher your revenue is. Your first response to increasing revenue should never be adding a head count. You shouldn't have to increase your technician count to increase revenue. You should be able to capitalize on the increase of available capacity through these operational efficiency levers so that you can start doing things like adding wallet share or adding profit sheerly because of the amount of resources going into your service delivery and day-to-day management are lessening. And then the other thing with this here is, especially in this owner, VP, C-suite kind of upper level management role, one of your primary jobs as well, outside of steering the ship and getting everybody onto the right path, the other side of it is keeping everybody on the right path. Maximizing efficiency requires all levels of the organization working towards it, not just you, not just a tech. Everybody needs to be involved. So as we're looking at moving down this path, your job is also to keep everybody engaged, right? We are working on the business. The people you have hired, the people who are being managed by you, the ones in day-to-day service delivery or engineering or frontline management or the like, those are the ones that we get to work in our business. Okay. So Service delivery. Okay. We're going to split our customer journey into a couple buckets here. Okay. We're going to remove from this particular conversation marketing and sales, billing, and customer offboarding. That's not to say we can't find efficiencies there. Okay. But the efficiencies aren't going to be as impactful. A nice example, billing. Let's say, for instance, I get a PSA, I automate my billing through integration with QuickBooks. I've saved my finance department a couple hours each week, right? That's pretty good. Let's say I buy a tool that gives me insight into all of my Microsoft licensing, right? I give my finance tool a source of truth for Microsoft billing and reporting. Again, we're saving them a couple hours each week. But if I come in and I automate patch, where across my 5 technicians, I'm saving 30 minutes a week, right? So 5 at 30 minutes per technician per week, right? I'm saving 2.5 hours per week per technician, right? I'm coming in and saving a lot more time overall. Okay. Customer offboarding. I'm not saying don't automate it. It's good, but it's not where our primary efforts should be. Our primary efforts should live in this manual process and automated process section of what is truly called service delivery. The day-to-day interaction you, your technicians, and your employees have with your customers. And those are going to be broken down into a couple sections. We're going to have the manual and we're going to have the automated. The manual, starting off with customer onboarding, is going to be a place where we can bring a lot of efficiencies. This is where we're going to start. Maybe not with our organization, but with our clientele. This is where we're going to gain all of the accurate documentation to support our clients. This is where we're going to find all the gremlins hiding in their environment. This is where we're going to get a better understanding of their estate. So we're going to utilize the automation available to us within our RMM, within our password and management documentation tool set, within our risk assessment tool set to start breeding efficiency. RMM tool for network discovery and automated deployment, right? Password management for and documentation management for the creation of solid SOPs and a centralized location to keep all admin passwords so your technicians don't have to keep 50 on a piece of paper inside your office, right? Risk assessment, understand the projects that are going to come out of bringing this client on board, understand the day-to-day vulnerabilities, risks, and items they see inside their environment that may hit your risk acceptance, right? Find sensitive data, find all those items and start to attack them in an assessment phase before we even get to onboarding. And all of this can be automated, right? We see our customer tickets, intrinsically reactive items, right? We need to look at doing things by having customer-friendly ticket creation, Twitter, email, text, phone call. How do you want to do it? We need to give an efficient method, right? We need accurate and tech-friendly capturing of notes and billable hours or non-billable hours because we still want to track that. We need regular communication with our clientele, either brought into our tool through an integrated remote support solution or automated responses coming from our PSA. Right? Inside our project work, right? We see the ability to breed efficiency again within our PSA so that we can look at proper documentation and management. We see our RMM starting to, in project work, start to become kind of a reactive automation tool. 10 most common things you do in a project, automate them, right? Set checklists, access to items, right? But on top of that, we also see our documentation continuing to grow. If you don't hear this from me enough during this conversation, the one thing you need to take from this for operational efficiency is the first time you do something, you learn it. The second time you do it, you're creating an SOP from what you've learned. The third time you do it, you're validating your SOP and you're automating the process. Okay. If everything else we talk about goes in one ear and out one ear today, that's the item that will at least get you down the path of operational efficiency. Learn it, document it, automate it. And project work does fall under that hood. Okay. Then we get our monitoring alerts. This is our proactive and our fully managed clientele in the dashboards telling us what to do. Hey, this is a problem, fix it. And we see operation efficiency or operational efficiency start to get built into our RMM. It becomes a source of truth for data analytics. It aids in billing. Okay. But what we also see is if we haven't put the time and effort to properly optimize, we're just throwing white noise into our technician's pit and they're going to start ignoring probably the most expensive piece of software we have outside of backup and recovery. And if we're not tactfully and targetedly setting thresholds and documenting process and automating as much as we can to solve our problems or proactively take care of them and properly alerting to get our technicians to be able to run the right pieces of automation or do the proper manual work, an RMM's useless. So even something like this starts to bring operational efficiency into our tool. Okay, we talked about these next three pieces of the life cycle already, but we're going to go over them again. As we're moving up our maturity model, the jump from a la carte to proactive, the biggest effect on our organization is going to be the reduction of security risks through automation. Patch is automated. Proactive maintenance is automated. We're solving problems before we start within an RMM tool that gives us the necessary tools to do this. We'll also see satellite options come in, like password management, automating credential resets and password rotation. We'll see documentation management come in and start to give our technicians standardized SOPs if we say involve something like an AI. Right? You start to see management by exception, not management by the rule. This is where we start to see our technicians get to, once we've automated routine maintenance, the point of being able to handle 250, 300, 350, 500, 750 is the highest I've heard and seen validated in real life, devices per technician, putting us into true operational efficiency. And this ties in with monitoring, right? We go back to, if you're throwing up white noise, it's not worth it. Monitoring causes disruptions for us as an MSP. It's the name of the game. Monitoring's there to alert on the exceptions or the failures that we need to be working on. It decreases our reaction time, but if it's not properly set, we're not getting good items out of this. It's also our way to include self-healing. The principal or services stops running, automatically restart it. Disk-based checks or monitors fail, empty the recycle bin, clean up all temp files, delete all downloads older than 90 days. Automatically install any missing patches that are found within reason. Right? This is where we're breeding in these efficiency items that are taking the time off of our technicians' day-to-day service delivery and putting the onus onto a system or into systems that are going to give them back time. Okay. It takes the human that is able to take a highly complex problem, simplify it, and come up with an imaginative and inventive and typically pretty good solution to a puzzle, and free them from the need to work on the repetitive 1, 2, 3 step items. Right? It allows a machine, which is very good at doing what it's told, solve step 1, step 2, step 3. Right? And putting our technicians and our engineers in a position to handle things above and beyond what that scripting or what that automation can do. So, a couple benchmarks here. Take a nice little screenshot if you would like. Go through this, see how you measure up, right? Give yourself a score 0 to 10. How do you think you're doing customer onboarding, tickets, monitoring, and the like? Nobody really should be getting a 10. Nobody really should be getting a 0. Let's be honest with ourselves, but don't be so self-deprecating it's negative or so positive over the top that it's damaging. All right, so we talk a lot about where, we talk a lot about how, or maybe not so how, but where and why we should be looking at operational efficiency. What we're going to do in this next section is we're going to talk about um, how are we going to measure that operational efficiency, and then we're going to look at discussing how we can implement some of these operational efficiency um, motions, right? Specifically around those 4 levers: eliminate wasted time, um, automate repetitive and redundant, properly structure, and the like. So, measuring these items, we're going to take a look at some KPIs. And these aren't meant to be, kind of the predatory-ish management tools or items, right? KPIs are never designed to do that. We may have come from environments like internal enterprise level IT where that was the case, where there may have been some of that, but that for us is not our intention. Our intention is to ensure our business is properly evolving along this operational maturity path and allowing us to manage and properly view um, our resources and their allocation and their use and that kind of deal. So we're going to take a look at these 5 sections: utilization, customer satisfaction, rework, speed, volume, and capacity. But we're operating very much under the idea of you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So each of these um, uh, sections is going to be focused on that kind of particular, I don't want to say ethos, but that particular mentality. So, where do we start with this? Well, we're going to start with 7 KPIs that we're going to take a look at: response time, SLA adherence, utilization rate, ticket volume, mean time to resolution, first time to fix percentage, and net promoter score. And we'll start off with our response time and um, our SLA adherence. Okay, we'll get to SLA adherence in just one second, but response times where we'll start. So the reason we focus on response time is a bit twofold. First off, our clients want to know that their requests are being properly captured. They want to know that they're being heard, right? And we can look at some things assisting us there. So we can look at things like our automated responses, giving us some good feedback here, right? Our customers, when they submit a ticket, automatically being responded to. Um, but that's not going to truly be our response time. Our response time is going to be when a technician is able to respond to a ticket. All right. So we have some help through automation, but it's not the end all be all. We need technicians talking to our clientele. And this could happen text, tweet, email, phone call, right? The automated response is the feel good. The KPI is response time. And what we're going to look at is, on average, across the small to medium customer support world, it's about 7 hours for response time. Okay. And we'll kind of cut to the point with this is, while that's the average, I think Personally, average is a little bit unacceptable here. Okay, 7 hours if I submit a ticket is not where I should be seeing response time back. Okay, maybe for some types of tickets, but not on average. The top 15% is an hour or under. And this is what we're shooting for here. Okay, our response time on average for our tickets should be in that hour mark. If you can get down to 45 or 30 minutes, that's very good on you. But the hour is going to be our golden rule. And the more efficient we get, the quicker our technicians can churn through the tickets, the quicker they can get to the next one, the quicker they can get that response time down. Now, response time is something that we are going to measure as an organization. We're not going to go tech by tech. We're not going to go tier by tier. Okay, we are going to go as an organization. Right? And we're going to look for that to continue to shrink as our efficiency grows. Coupled with that is going to be our SLAs. SLAs are a contractual agreement as to when you should be talking to somebody for a ticket. Service license agreement is what SLA stands for. So we want to set these with proper expectations from our end users and proper expectations from ourselves as MSPs. First things first, the KPI for SLA adherence should be at 100%, no questions asked. Okay. If you're violating your SLA, something's going wrong. But the way we're going to look at setting this up, or at least the way I think it should be set up, is we should look at tiering out our tickets. We should have 4 to 5 levels. Critical, important, moderate, low, and other being the optional 4th or 5th option, ticket levels. And our critical tickets we're going to define as something that is business halting for an entire organization. This is the flood, this is the fire, this is the hack, this is the business as a whole comes to a stop. Critical tickets that get submitted should be responded to, at least in my mind, in twice your average response time. So if my average response time is an hour, my SLA for critical tickets is going to be 2 hours. Important, these are going to be tickets that involve a situation that prevents a portion of a business from operating, not a majority. If it's above 50%, I think that hits critical. But if it's 1 device, if it's 2 devices, that kind of deal, that's an important ticket. I believe that's going to be about 4 hours if we're using our 1 hour average response time. Moderate, productivity is slowed but not halted, and the person or people involved in the ticket can pick up another task while we're responding to their immediate need. 6 hours. Low, a business day, 8 hours. Other, depending on how you'd like to define it, anywhere from a business day to 2 business days, so that 8 to 16-hour mark. Okay. The reason I'm picking these is because this is the longest it should take to respond to a ticket of that particular type. If I am an end user or I'm an MSP and I see a critical ticket and it's not responded to in 2 hours, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, right? Because again, what are we doing? We're selling productivity and peace of mind through the lens of cybersecurity. So we get a nice global view of efficiency. We get a nice global view of how our support is moving along. The next SLA we'll take a look at is going to be our utilization rate. Now, this is where we are going to start measuring at multiple levels. And we're going to start getting a little bit more or less granular as we're going through. So, response time and SLA adherence, organization-wide. Utilization rate, which is going to be the direct relationship between utilization and, or I should say, hours spent working and hours not spent working. This is going to be measured per technician or per individual. We're not going to compare individuals, but we're going to measure it, and then organizationally as well. So we're going to have two ways of looking at this. We're going to have that a la carte and break fix world of the reactive rate, hours billed over hours worked, and then we're going to have that managed rate, hours billed plus hours managed over hours worked. Okay. And I think the managed here is a little bit simplistic, but it works. I think it's simplistic because we need to start thinking about things in this proactive and fully managed world that could increase our management capabilities as well as our efficiency capabilities. Does continued learning fall under utilization? Well, I think if it directly applies to your clientele, sure. You're spending hours generating, in the long run, revenue. Okay? If you're studying literature at an MSP, that does not fall under utilization, right? So a little bit of gray area in that managed rate. But what we're going to shoot for is about that 80% mark. And we can see there's typically a direct relationship between utilization rate and profitability. 60% utilization, 3 to 5% EBITDA. 70%, 6 to 9. 80%, 10 plus. And if we look at our quartiles, right, so we move up that operational maturity, it makes a little bit of sense. Okay. Now, 80% is our golden number here. And if we do some quick math, or we've already done the quick math, we'll realize that that's saying that our employees are going to be utilized 6.5 hours of the 8-hour working day that they are in the office or, working for us. And that does give some extra time for maybe outside continual learning, right? You have a tier 3 technician who is learning Python. Doesn't directly affect hours managed, but it will in the future, but not right now. So maybe that falls under it for you. You have a tier 3 technician who's looking at utilizing a reporting tool within your org. Okay, again, not directly managed, okay, but good use. The other reason we're looking at the discrepancy of about an hour and a half at the 80% mark is that we're going to focus on employee health and well-being here as well. Because let's be honest, we are customer service representatives, at least on the technician side of the house first. Yes, we are support. Yes, we are whatever we're technically needed to be for our end users, okay? But we're customer service at our core. And customer service is always going to see some items that bleed into utilization. Nice, easy example, or some examples would be, what's for dinner texts to and from the partner at home? Your buddy texts you because you guys are going out, you take a minute, you text back, I'll meet you at this bar or pub, right? Kid gets sick at school, you got to take a phone call, right? Items like that, day-to-day life items that need to be handled, okay, to a point. Don't let it be abused, but to a point. The other thing that we're going to see with this here is we're customer service. If I'm mad or if I'm angry and I'm on the phone with a client, I am immediately off the bat not providing world-class customer service. So I always use the for instance here as an example of, we've all had this phone call. You get off the phone and the person that you just talked to for the past 15 to 30 minutes was just the most infuriating human being on the planet. They were incredibly angry. They wouldn't let you talk. You come to find out that the problem wasn't anything to do with your services. It was the fact that they couldn't plug the computer into a power strip, and it took you 30 minutes to get them to realize and stop yelling at you that they needed to plug it in, right? Continue down the path of worse there, right? I used to work at Men's Warehouse. That'll come up in just a second, but I used to work prom. Believe me, you haven't seen any worse than I have. So what I mean to say with this, or where I'm going with this, is After you get off that phone, a 5-minute break's okay. Walk to the coffee pot, walk to the water cooler, take a bathroom break, step outside for a minute, okay? Take a smoke break. That recoup time, while you're not being utilized, is still valuable because it gives you the ability to get back into good customer service mode. It gives you the ability to see a coworker and complain. You wouldn't imagine what I just heard, right? And while we don't typically like to hear about, oh, we're going to complain about our customers, it's human nature. Okay. Not all our customers are perfect. Not all of our customers are saints. They are calling us specifically for support in a time crunch, in a time of need, for something they typically don't understand. That is frustrating. That's angering. And to expect them to be incredibly calm at all points in time, it's just not going to happen. And we've got to take that on. So, health, right? And I'm a big proponent of this. And I go back to that Men's Warehouse example, right? Because one of the stores I worked with at Men's Warehouse was one of the nation leading stores, not in volume, but in sales percentages. Average ticket, accessories sold, right? Up upgrades sold, shoes sold, whatever you would like to tack onto these sales. But and by nationwide, I mean we're beating out the Fifth Ave store, right? Or the LA store or the San Fran store, right? We did very, very well. And I believe that a large part of this was designed around our management, proudly enough, myself included, taking the time to focus on our salesperson and representative sanity. It's customer service, right? We see the same things you guys see, just a little bit different at scale. Okay. And we would take these moments of frustration, right? You have somebody come in just screaming at you for something that's not even your fault. They decided that they were going to turn their suit into shorts and they're demanding a refund because we sold them shorts, right? And you watched them right outside the store take the scissors to it. Seen it done. The representative who dealt with that, the manager that dealt with that, when that person left, that was 5 minutes. They get a break, right? So get back to your sanity, get back to your calm, get back to world-class customer service. And utilization rate plays a lot into this. Okay. The other thing with utilization rate and this discrepancy that we'll see is it allows for knowledge transfer amongst technicians. So we come back to hours managed in the gray area that is it. Well, if I'm leading a good tech support organization, I believe that knowledge passes down. My engineers teach my tier threes. My tier threes teach my engineers or my tier twos, depending, right? My tier twos teach my tier ones. So if I'm seeing that happen in my organization, it doesn't really fall under hours managed, does it? But I like kind of having that time because it shows my employees that I'm willing to support their growth. I'm willing to support their long-term career health inside my organization, and it leads to better retention. So there's a lot of items inside this utilization rate where we really don't quite want to shoot for that 90, 95, 100%. The caveat to that, though, is we want to make it so that as management, we are not the ones forcing them to hit 90, 95, 100, 110, 120%, right? We want if they would like to accept that. My for instance example is I was on the creation of the PSM team here at Enable. In our very early days of creation, there were 6 of us on the team, and for a very small period of time, we had a account or book of business count that was forcing us into the 50 to 60 hours a week. No questions. Okay. We were forced that level of work because our estimated amount of time work as a partner success manager compared to account manager was a little bit undershot. And to get everything done, we had to do it. That's not healthy. Now, after that was remedied, the six of us still probably worked about 45 to 50 hours a week, but that was our choice. We chose to do that relationship building above and beyond what was expected. We chose to do that account support above and beyond what was expected because we knew it would pay off for us in the long run. Okay. That's fine. The first part of that's not, right? Management and ownership and VP levels, we don't want to push our employees to burnout. Part of our job is to manage that. And that's where this kind of utilization rate comes in. Okay. This is, again, organizational or individual tech. We want to see utilization rate getting up to or right at that 80%, and then we want to monitor as we go. Okay, if we see a large dip or a large jump, it necessitates research as to why, what happened. Was there an all hands on deck event for that particular time period that we're looking at, right? We're a small 5 tech MSP or 3 tech MSP. Our largest client had a piece of ransomware, and the three of them for that week just ransomware, all hands on deck, right? Okay, acceptable, right? So keep that in mind as we're looking at utilization rate. The next item is going to be average time to resolution. This is going to be managed or looked at when we're reporting at an individual technician level and a organization and tier level. So I want my individual techs, my L1, my L2, my L3, and I want my organization as a whole statistics here. And what we're going to be measuring is average time elapsed from the opening of a ticket, okay, to the closing of a ticket, or the reporting of an incident to the resolution of this incident. Okay, what we're going to look at is going to be a decrease in that time, operational efficiencies improving. A increase in that time, operational efficiency is declining. Okay, top 20%, we're going to see a 2-day average time to resolution metric as our goal to be hitting. Okay. The one thing we will keep in mind with this is we're still not looking at a KPI that is designed to be comparative across technicians. We have different ways of working. We have different ways of putting customer service first, right? And the example I like to use is we've got 2 technicians. We've got Jason and we've got John. John is a little bit more traditional of a technician. He comes from a technical background. He's got a CS degree. We're his first job or internship in or out of college, right? He's coming from a very technical background. Then we've got Jason. Jason joined us as a salesperson, but we come to find out that he's incredibly technical. We just didn't know it. He joined an MSP because he likes the puzzles. He likes the technical aspect of it, but he's also a pretty good salesman. Well, he decided that he wanted to move to our support organization. So him and John are now working side by side. John's tickets probably going to be a little bit quicker than Jason's. John, typically coming from that technical background, is going to approach customer service in a little bit more of blunt or a little bit more curt of a manner. Not saying that his customer service isn't impeccable, not saying that his customer service isn't completely on point, but more often than not, when you come from a technical background, you see a problem, you solve a problem. And the conversation and interactions with the end users will reflect that. Jason, on the other hand, has that additional little experience on top of it, where relationship building is something he's good with and he knows is good for retention. His tickets are going to take a bit longer because he's going to ask about the dog. He's going to ask about the vacation. He's going to ask about the spouse or the kids or something like that. Just that little bit. Now, are either of them wrong? No, Maybe I want to cross-train between the two, right? But neither are wrong. Okay, both are operating under world-class customer service as a basis of their day-to-day service delivery. They are both solving a need and solving a problem efficiently. It's just John may take 5 minutes on a ticket, Jason takes 6.5. Okay, not too worried about that. Now, as a discrepancy, if we're comparing technicians and Jason's taking 20 minutes, John taking 5 minutes, as an extreme example, yeah, we're comparing techs. We need to figure out what's going on here. Is Jason dawdling? Is he talking too much? Does he not know what he's doing? Blah, blah, blah. But as long as we're within a margin of error that's acceptable for us, okay, we're going to stay away from those comparisons, okay, because it can be sometimes demoralizing. It can be sometimes problematic when we look at taking a tool away from a technician or away from a support representative that has led to retention, has led to good client relationship, right? If every technician at Enable knew something to chit chat with about our end users in their organization, I'd be incredibly happy, because while they're perusing through logs, they could sit there and build a relationship. It's quite nice. But anywho, I digress. We want to be careful when comparing technicians, not only because of their role differentiation, but because of their service delivery differentiation. Okay, and that's to say as well, the SOP they follow should not deviate. We want standardization. We want overall standardization in that fashion. Okay, kind of keep that in mind. Now, the other thing I'll address here as well, because when I saw this, right, I had to think back to my time as an MSP and go, good God, 2 days is a very long time for average resolution or average time to resolution. And then we start to think about, oh, I have those tier 3 tickets that take like 10, 15, 7 days. I've got those tier 2 tickets that are 3, 4, 5 days. Start to see where that average gets bumped up a little bit there. So 2 days, reasonable set of time. All right, ticket volume. It's our overall measure of capacity and productivity. It's our individual technician measure of efficiency, right? We're going to look at two subsets of tickets, billable and non-billable. And what we should expect as we go through efficiency gains is non-billable decreases, billable increases. And pretty much what we're going to look at is the amount of tickets that are opened daily, weekly, monthly, compared to the tickets that are closed, right? That gives us our win percentage. And then ticket volume is sheerly just number of tickets resolved. Okay, daily is a bit difficult. If you want to report that granular, by all means do it. Weekly and monthly tend to be preferred. Okay, and pretty much what we're looking for here is to see those numbers up and to the right or down and to the right with the billable and non-billable respectively. This can be a measure of individual technicians. It can be a measure of individual tiers. It can be a measure of your organization as an individual whole. Okay. This is a reasonable comparison amongst technicians, but again, a little bit of differentiation is never a bad thing. Go back to my Jason and John example. But if we see a large discrepancy, Jason handles 150 tickets per week, John handles 10, 75. Something's going on. We need to figure it out. But in the operational efficiency world, we want to see those billable up and to the right, non-billable down and to the right. Next to last item we're going to talk about here is going to be first time to fix percentage. This is going to be an overall report. It's going to be an individual technician report, and it's going to be a comparative report for individual technicians. This is where we can start to uncover things like education process that needs to be learned or knowledge gaps that need to be hit. And pretty much what we're going to be looking at is this percentage to go up as we become more effective. And what we're going to do is take cases closed minus our cases reopened over cases closed. How many times over the specified time frame that I'm reporting on, okay, did I see fixes happen the first time? One person, one problem, one ticket. Now, the time period there's important. Look at a print spooler. If I'm dealing with print spooler issues and I'm looking at a month time frame, those print spooler issues could pop up for any billion number of reasons over a month multiple times. Maybe I need to shrink my purview there. Okay, but what we're looking at is getting ourselves into the 85, 90, 95% range first time to fix percentage. We want to get away from band-aids. Band-aids in the name of quick are not good. You need to solve a root cause. And we're going to address this a little bit later as well as we start to get into tools to increase efficiency. So we'll come back to this one. And then last but not least, what we're going to have is going to be Net Promoter Score, or NPS. NPS surveys are incredibly simple. It's a single question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer a friend or colleague to adopt our services for external? And what we're going to do is we're going to take our percentage of promoters and subtract our percentage of detractors from them. Detractors are going to be 0 to 6. We're going to call passives, or our in-betweeners, 7 to 8. And we're going to call our promoters a 9 to a 10. When we look at our scale of good or great, you'll note these seem a little bit low. Whereas less than 0, you definitely need help. But 0 to 30, you're doing pretty good. 30 to 70, gold star, you're doing great. 70 plus, you get a blue ribbon, you get a gold medal, you get a gold star, you're best in class. Okay, and what we need to take into account here when we're measuring this is typically the easiest time to get somebody to answer a survey is directly after a ticket. Sending it at a random period in time, probably not going to get many answers back. You'll get some, but not as many as you want. So if we're sending it right after a ticket, yeah, we got the fuzzies because we solved the problem, but we're sending them at the end of a time of frustration. They quickly need to get back to work, and we're going to have to take that into account. How many times have you seen a support survey come in and you've just gone zeros across the board, click next, go, right? Or ignored it entirely. Okay, so when we look at this process or this KPI, not only is it a good general overall measure of our customer satisfaction as an organization, it's also a call to retention. Detractors should be contacted within a couple hours of turning in a highly negative NPS score. A retention event has been uncovered, attack it. Now, that being said, a good amount of the time, you're just going to hear from the other end of the phone, oh no, I'm incredibly happy with your services. Yeah, you can change it to a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10. I just didn't want to answer the survey, so I hit 0 and moved on. Sorry about that. Or, you'll see, oh, I saw a survey, I just hit 0. I wasn't paying attention. My apologies, right? Or I didn't answer it because. Okay. Some of the time, you'll get a true detractor. This is why I said it. This is what needs to be done better. I'm unhappy with this, right? And that phone call needs to happen. For our promoters, we can send out an email within a couple hours of getting a positive score, 9 or 10. Thank you so much for your faith in us and your continued loyalty to our organization, blah, blah, blah. What are we doing well? What can we do better? Passives, within, say, 48 hours. Thank you so much for your positive response to our survey. We'd like to get some feedback from you when you get a moment, positives, negatives, and the like. Okay, and this gives us a good idea of how our customer service is presented, how our operational efficiency gains are being seen. And it's also when we start asking about what we can do better, a nice place to start targeting some operational efficiency items, maybe. Okay. I do also look at doing this internally. Now, external is not anonymous. Internal is, however. Okay. Internal, I'm keeping anonymous because I want internal feedback coming to me. I don't want to track it where it's coming from. If you track where it's coming from, people won't be as honest. Okay, so what my survey is internally, it's going to be maybe once a quarter. I'm going to send out on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer a friend or colleague to work here? And I'm going to have an open field. Opinions, suggestions, whatever we'd like to call it. And I'm going to hold myself to the same metrics. I like this one because it allows us to determine where procedural and organizational issues could be. It also opens up our hiring practice. If I have an exceptional engineer and they have a good NPS score or a good opinion of us, let's be honest, that engineer probably hangs out with other engineers. It's a great place to look at hiring. You already got a good reference from a trusted employee. And if it's somebody they know quite well, you probably got a really good person on the other end there as well, right? Good people don't typically hang out with, bad people, right? And I shouldn't say good or bad there. I should say, the whole birds of a feather flock together thing is quite real. If I've got a security analyst with a master's degree, I can guarantee you they hang out with at least some other security analysts with a master's degree. So utilize that. NPS score internally, quite a nice thing as well. So we know how to measure it. We know why we're looking at increasing our efficiency. We know where or what we're pulling or what tools we have to increase our efficiency. Well, how are we going to do this? And it's all going to come through these levers. Structuring staff, leveraging automation, eliminating wasted time, reducing avoidable issues, growing the solving complex problems portion of our pie chart. And while we're able to single out these levers, singling out where we're going to look at pulling these levers across these individual tools is, well, a little bit of a gray area. Aligning people. Okay, I get structuring staff, but aligning people also comes into, say, escalation paths. That's leveraging automation or reducing avoidable issues. Structuring our process, leveraging automation, reducing avoidable issues, eliminating waste, and structuring staff. All four hit that particular tool for improvement. Employ automation, reduce avoidable issues, eliminate waste time, leverage automation, right? So we're going to go kind of across levers here as we talk about what we're going to be dealing with. We're also then going to talk at the end about how we can keep the culture of efficiency in our organization with some incentive conversation. So staff and process, right? Staff and process, when we look at this at a base, we're always going to see it starts with people. And while I don't disagree with that to a point, I am very much a fan of, we're going to go back to the first time you do something, you learn it. The second time you do it, you document it. The third time you do it, you're automating it. Okay. And the reason I say that is you cannot have good staff and process structure without good documentation and good SOPs. Then we get into the what came first, chicken or the egg argument. Can't have good SOPs or documentation without people behind it. Well, you can't have people behind that stuff without a good base of documentation and operating procedures. And it's just a loop. So pick where you want to start. I tend to feel that documentation and accessibility of information and SOPs coming down from the owners, from the VPs, from the service delivery management teams are places where we're going to start this efficiency. Okay. It continues on through the people because they're the one who are going to implement it and they're the people who are going to be using the tools, right? And all of this is going to be automated with our tool set. your RMM, your PSA, your password tool set, your take control tool set, that repository where you keep all of your pieces of automation, right? Our tool set is going to help us automate these processes. So when we look at saying we start with people, what we're really looking at saying here is we've got the right people in the right positions to utilize the documentation and SOPs that we've generated. So whether or not you think the people or the documentation comes first, it's inconsequential at this point. We've got to get our structure right. And the golden zone to be in is going to be 65% of your tech support organization or technical staff operating on your help desk and your NOC. You're going to have 15% of that technical staff operating in professional services, be it engineers that are managing the automation of your environments and your remediation and your reactive and your proactive and all that stuff, or your project techs. 5% are going to be in the field. And we're doing this because the more remote work we get, the more efficient we are, especially when we look at remote background. Our end users won't even know we're there, right? Remote work is cheaper, right? It opens up more time for projects, which are costly and billable. We like billable, right? And field work is a time sink, and it's costly. So our golden zone, again, 65% help desk and knock, 15% professional services, 5% or less field technicians, right? And remember, field technicians don't count when the professional services need to go on site. If my professional services team is putting together a new physical database for my legal client, that doesn't count as field technician, that counts as project. Field technician are the I've got to put boots on the ground to get myself into their office, okay, to solve a ticket. All right. So we look at this where we've got roughly 15% of our organization or so working on our business. And then I've got roughly 85% working in our business. Okay. And the levers need to support this, right? Leverage automation to eliminate wasted time. A nice, quick, easy example, critical event check fails inside RMM. For security log, go in, use some PowerShell to pull those security logs, get the basic research done first, right? Make it so that your help desk and NOC can manage self-healing rather than all of the errors, managed by exception, not by rule. And we look at pulling on these levers as we increase our automation, as we increase our, I don't want to say rigidity, but our standardization of our tech support structure. As we look at bringing down the wasted time counts, right? Better research, better timekeeping, better this, that, or the other, right? We start to see that ticket solving moves down. So what we should see is tier one's solving 75% of all of our tickets. Tier two is in that 15 to 20% range. Tier three is in that 5 to 10% range because they're reserved for the unsolvable tickets in the project work. Okay. So what we're looking at is our availability of automation, our availability of SOPs, our availability to quickly and easily pull documentation and perform research is now setting it up so that tier one can solve these. Now, this has to be backed by a proper escalation path. We'll get to that in a second, but this is where our efficiency is bringing us. Tier one operating in a fashion that if we get 200 tickets per week, 250 of them are solved at that level, right? 40 hit tier two, 10 hit tier three. if that. Okay. And we're doing this not only to make it so that our more experienced engineers can increase their utilization, or experienced technicians can increase their utilization by working on projects or automation or the like, right? We're shortening our time to resolution because we've eliminated that wasted time around research and admin work or timekeeping work, and we're increasing our capacity ahead of our volume. Okay, the name of the game with operational efficiency is that capacity needs to stay above our proposed volume. The minute volume starts to increase above capacity, we're behind the ball. Okay. So we talked about all of this begins off of resources given. SOPs, documentation, escalation process. And I like documentation templates being in here because it gives our L1, our L2, and our L3 technicians a chance to utilize those templates to build their own documentation to submit to engineering. Right? If an L1 tech has an idea about how to become more efficient, they should not be told just to sit down, be quiet, you're not an engineer. They should be listened to, and a template is a great way to get that done. So we start off with a couple questions to ourselves. Is your ticket workflow documented? Do you have processes in place to ensure that your SLAs are met, that your tickets are getting to the best resource as quickly as possible, and that your knowledge is in a repository? And we focus on these documentation questions and these SOP questions because when we look at a $2 million MSP, if we see 30% of time spent on searching for information, that's $75K a year that we're wasting. Okay, so how do we combat this with our proper structure, 65-15-5? How do we combat this with our proper documentation and proper access to information and proper access to automation? Well, first up, we're removing the wasted time, but what we're really doing is implementing an escalation process. First off, certain tickets need to be auto-escalated, managed by exception, not by the rule. Okay, so if I see something come in and it's got fire or flood or ransomware in the ticket title, skip tier 1, skip tier 2, go to tier 3. Tier 3 can de-escalate it if necessary, but get it to them. Don't give the lower tiers that headache. Don't put them down that rabbit hole. Give it to the experts. If it says backup, probably don't need to give it to tier 1. Get it into tier 2 SANS. Right? If it says EDR or PST, vulnerability, something like that, escalate properly. Outside of that, what we're going to do is, rather than putting a mandate on you must spend this much time on a ticket, we're going to put a limit on a ticket. And at each level, 1 and 2, we're going to give you 30 minutes. That 30 minutes is not to resolve a ticket, but to find and validate that you can implement the resolution. So ticket comes in, tier 1's taking a look at it. They're doing the research for the ticket because the print spooler is not working. The service is running, but they're still not able to print. They're connected to the printer, it's properly communicating, but something's going on here. Tier 1 technician gets 30 minutes. Go through documentation, go through Google, figure out if you can find the resolution and implement it for that problem. When 30 minutes hits, or you determine you cannot resolve it with your skill set, it moves to tier 2. Tier 2 repeats that process and moves to tier 3 if necessary. But what this is doing is, as we are focusing on that move resolution down fashion, okay, we are giving tier 1 the adequate time to research. We're not focusing on them churning and burning just the easy stuff and moving on. We're allowing ourselves to now start taking tickets that they escalate to review and determine where knowledge gaps are. turning tier 1 into like tier 1.5, tier 2 into tier 2.5, tier 3 into engineering, right? And we're allowing that growth and that ability to start performing more than just solve it. We're performing more troubleshooting. We're performing more find the root cause work. Okay, so while this may bump up tier 1's average response time in the near future, long term it's going to start to decrease it. And tiers 2 and tier 3 are going to see a dramatic decrease because tier 1 is now given the resources to start handling more and more of those tickets. They're given the continual learning or the new education to start handling more and more of these tickets, right? And if we think about an average tier 1 day, right, or week, on average, tier 1 technicians, internal versus MSP, doesn't matter, just national, at least in the US average, is 150 tickets per tier 1 technician per week, which comes out to be about 30 a day. That 30-minute time limit is going to be hit too often, right? If I'm working 6.5 hours doing 30 tickets per day, right, that's going to bring me right around to the 13 or so minute per ticket realm at tier 1, half that 30-minute limit. So I have a little bit of leeway because that 13 minutes is an average to say, okay, I spent 6 minutes on this ticket, 5 minutes on this ticket. I can hit that 30-minute tier. I don't feel bad. My numbers will stay good. I'm still hitting my KPIs. I'm still tracking operational efficiency positively for my organization. So I love this kind of defined escalation process with a little bit of leeway and independence for your technicians. On the automation side of the house here, we're not going to spend much time. We have 1,000,001 different boot camps on automation. We've got N-Central, we've got Insight, we've got 15 things you can and should automate. We've got PowerShell basics. We've got Automation Manager basics. We've got all of these tools out there. Suffice to say that there's not a level of service delivery or a level of the life cycle of your customer that cannot gain efficiency and positively benefit from automation. If you don't know PowerShell, get the Automation Manager from N-Central or Insight. If you know PowerShell, get the Automation Manager because it'll make your life easier. And for those really complex items, you can use those objects to build this nice little flow and then supplement with PowerShell. And we need to be starting within our reactive, proactive, and self-healing tasks. And where we need to start looking at this is, at least from an organization, how often are you running scripts? Do your tier 1 technicians run a script once a day for 30 tickets? That's pretty rough. I'd like to see 20 times, right? How often are your engineers seeing the fruits of their labor run, right? Are you setting aside time weekly and monthly at all levels of the organization to capture, implement, or tweak automation? Engineers going to be implementing and tweaking more often than not, maybe tier 3. But tier 1 is like your greatest resource to find out where you should automate. Just send an engineer to talk to tier 1, and the only thing that that engineer needs to ask for that entire meeting are, what are the top 10 things that frustrate you most in our ticket queue? There's your top 10 things you can automate, if possible, right? So utilize the resources internal, utilize the resources that your solutions bring to you, and set aside time to look at bringing automation in. And remember, nobody in your organization will ever automate themselves out of a job. They will never efficiency themselves out of a job. They automate themselves to a promotion. Because if they're good enough to automate tier 1, they need to be at tier 2, tier 3, or an engineer level, because they will eventually become good service delivery management or director material. Okay, then think about the services and the offerings that your vendors offer. Look, we do our boot camps. We talked about them. Okay, but find a vendor that doesn't offer some help. I challenge you. There's few out there, even the enterprise level ones. SentinelOne has a huge repository of how to automate using their API. It's exceptional. I had an MSP that wasn't quite happy with the log integration for the syslog server in EDR. They went through API documentation with a rep from SentinelOne and myself, but SentinelOne, they connected to SIEM-Tool via API so we could get the perfect information through. Right? Vendors have resources, not just us. Okay. This slide here, I will admit, I am not quite the biggest fan of this number right here. I think that it should be 70%, not 60. I think 70% of your day-to-day service delivery should be automated. That doesn't mean it's 100% automated, but that means it has automation in it. Look at patching. Automate patching. If it fails, you still got to manually do something. But that counts towards service delivery is automated. 70% is the number of gold we're looking for. It increases your consistency. It frees up human time, complex problem solving, simplified down into a solution that is easily actionable and runnable. Humans are there to solve puzzles. Machines are there to implement the individual yes or no, if then steps. Okay. This allows us to take routine maintenance with zero human interaction. It allows us to start customizing our monitoring for specific things to our SOWs. Standardization and increased quality of services, increased retention. All of this is. Okay. So when we look at automation, right, we're looking at self-healing, reactive, and proactive items. That SOW checklist, automate it. That SOW remediation list, when it comes to your monitors, automate them as much as possible. Those reactive tasks your technicians perform more than once a day, automate them. Proactive maintenance that's more than once a day, automate it. Okay. And then the last thing we'll talk about is going to be some incentives. We've heavily hit on the fact that this is a organizational-wide culture, ethos, and movement. And we've got to build that. As business owners, we can look at bringing into this fold a couple people, but that's not valuable for us. We need everybody on board. And an easy way to do this is incentives. Incentivize behavior around your best practices. Right? Maybe not SLA goals, because I think those should be 100% bar none, but automation, documentation, any efficiency goals that you have. Create a bounty, create a reward system. Be inventive though. Money's good. Don't get me wrong. Money talks, point blank. But have something either else or replace it with something that is tangible. Okay, people like bragging rights. So look at our tech support enables. The tech support representative of the quarter or the month gets a about 6.5 foot tall trophy with a dude like hulking out, ripping open his shirt on it on top, and a crown to wear or hang off the trophy. For that month, that's bragging rights. Okay, you hear about the money from time to time inside the office when somebody wins. Oh, I can do this with it. Oh, I can get that's the icing on the cake I needed to get a new car, that kind of deal. But more often than not, people are talking smack with the trophy and the crown, right? I had an MSP that managed car dealerships under my book of business at SolarWinds back in the day. Their bounty for automation was that you got a BMW for a month or a quarter, depending. What this MSP did is when they went through and did the math, they found it was about $2,200 to $2,300 per month because they managed the car dealership to get a 3 or a 5 series. On average, their technicians who were automating were saving them 10 to 50K a month or quarter. Well, if I'm saving you 5 times or generating 5 times the revenue that it takes to pay for something, that seems like a pretty darn good incentive, right? They got a parking spot up front, they got to drive the flashy car, and they got bragging rights out of it. Okay, so incentives don't just have to be money. They can be something more fun. But what they need to do is incentivize the continual building of automation, the continual documentation and review of SOPs, the continual improvement of those sections so that you can start to see your KPIs track better towards operational efficiency, but you can also see it become more of a cultural ethos. Operational efficiency is in our blood, right? You'll know you've hit it when you have a new tier 1 tech come in on their first day of work and the first or second thing the second or third thing that's said to them out of, hey, what's your name, is, did you know PowerShell? You probably want to learn it. We got this wicked cool thing going on, right? Or have you automated before? Or, oh, the trophy? Yeah, it's because I'm automation guru, right? Something where that becomes a tick and a benefit of being a part of the organization. But anywho, I digress. Best in class activities. We've talked about these this entire time. Leverage documentation, schedule time to actually look at automating or maintaining your processes and procedures. Constant training and continual knowledge growth, right? Measure your KPIs. Constantly look for new ways to optimize or become more efficient. And this all boils down into 10 minutes of savings per day for 5 technicians adds up to 5.5 weeks per year. If we look at in the US, maybe a little bit low estimate nowadays, but an average fully burdened labor cost per hour per technician of $45, right? If I am saving 5.5 weeks, right, that's 40 hours a week, so 220 hours, right? 5 times 4 is 220 hours at roughly $45 per hour, right? That's 10K or so. Let me check my math. Right? 5.5 weeks times 40 hours times 45. Yep, it's about 10K. It's a third of a marketing campaign. Right? Imagine what you could do when you save 30 minutes per day. Automate patching, right? An hour a day. Automate your proactive maintenance. Okay. It builds up and it builds up quick. And it doesn't have to be large increments of time, right? If we're 5 technicians and we save 30 seconds a day, it's still a few $100s. There's nothing to shake a stick at. So we got some homework, right? Go through what we went over today. Create yourself a game plan. Bring your other executive C-level upper management into the fold. Bring your frontline management into the fold. Let's start passing this down the ladder of our organization so we can start to bring in the real MVPs of this game with the technicians and the engineers who are going to be implementing and utilizing all of this in conjunction with those front managers, and start to set goals. Don't set the goal of automate proactive maintenance. Negative. Set the goal of, I want to, in 3 weeks, automate every disk space check self-healing item that I can utilizing PowerShell. It's a SMART goal. Okay. It is situational, measurable, attainable, relatable, and it is time-based. Right? SMART goals. If you don't remember it, look it up. That's how you want to set your expectations for your employees, for those under your management, for yourself to be moving through this process. We'll end with a thank you so much for coming today. Should you have any lingering questions, please feel free to reach out to me, joseph.ferla@enable.com. Should you need to reach out. Outside of that, it's a pleasure as always. We'll look forward to seeing you in subsequent boot camps and office hours. Ta-ta.